They told me a lot of things that were going to happen during this lifetime. Didn't believe it. No way. And now we're living at a point in time on this planet where a lot of them are coming to pass, such as a lot of environmental changes, a lot of social, structural, political upheaval, that there would be so much just chaos on the planet. But what would come out of it would be the seeds of a new civilization for mankind to go forward.
Thanks for watching the Near Death Network here on YouTube. My name is Mark Lewis. I thank you for watching our videos, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And as always, leave us your comments.
Well, joining me now is my longtime friend, Marcia Schafer. Appreciate you stopping by. For those who don't know, your background is very diverse. You've been in the medical space, you have an MBA, you're accredited in those fields, but you're also into Spirconomics, which we're going to talk about extensively in this show. And so thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Good to talk about consciousness as it relates from your paradigm, which we will get into sequentially over time. But let's get into your background, where you grew up, how your philosophy of life was shaped by your familial surroundings.
What you asked first is, I grew up in a general neighborhood of my own time era, boomer. And I had a lot of extraordinary experiences that I didn't really understand at the time that came to make more sense as I grew older. But before we go on, there's something really important that I want to state, and that is what I'm going to talk about today and what we're going to discuss are things that I've come to understand through my own unique experiences and understanding. So people often try to say, this is reality, this is what it is, this is what you have to believe. My focus is about emphasizing we all need to think independently and take bits of information that we can put together to make sense of the world, to make sense of who we are, and to be the best version of ourselves. So before I get into it, I just want to get that clear, because I'm going to talk about a lot of things that for some people they'll be very comfortable, and for some people they'll be like, really? So as I was saying, I grew up in, a average environment on the East Coast, and had a lot of experiences that I didn't really understand. And as a result, I was a little bit scared and just kind of withdrew a little bit, especially during the nighttime when all these things happened. And then...
so give us for instance, an experience.
For instance
what does that mean?
I had a lot of visits from entities that are not anchored on this planet. I had a lot of experiences from the crib, actually, and from when I was very young, when I would be just taken during the nighttime and be taught a lot of things that I just didn't have the facility to understand as a very young being, especially as a young child. But the intriguing thing is that a lot of things that they taught me and they showed me and that I experienced came together in a way where I understood that they were telling me about reality isn't just what you think it is. There's a lot more out there, and we want you to understand these things so that you can take them and share them later on in your life. The other thing that was kind of intriguing that, Mark, you and I have talked about is that they told me a lot of things that were going to happen during this lifetime. Didn't believe it. No way. And now we're living at a point in time on this planet where a lot of them are coming to pass, such as a lot of environmental changes, a lot of social, structural, political upheaval, that there would be so much just chaos on the planet. But what would come out of it would be the seeds of a new civilization for mankind to go forward. But it would be a very difficult time for us. So all the experiences I had, and you asked for some details, I would be, I was a teenager and I was pulled out of my body suddenly and then given a life review and saw myself dying. I saw myself in ancient Egypt in a sarcophagus where I had been buried because live because my husband apparently was a man of importance. And apparently in that civilization, spouses went with them when they went into the hereafter. But what did that do? I mean, did it freak me out? Not really. It made me understand where it comes into the near-death network that we're an eternal being, that death is just another interlude, another step on our journey here.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I had many experiences like that. I had life reviews after life reviews. And then later on in my life, I discovered that I was able to not only see my own lifetimes, but those of other people, just by looking at them or looking at a picture. So I had all these experiences from, I hate to call them extraterrestrials, but I will for right now, extraterrestrial types of visitors that helped me to understand as I grew more and more that life was really very different from what we understand it to be. And if we had the capacity to understand that, we would have so much power over ourselves and our lives to be able to move forward positively, individually and collectively, and that this was an important growth step for humanity. So as I said, I was pulled out of my body. I saw different lifetimes, had reincarnation experiences. But the thing that is most intriguing to me is that it wasn't one species that was visiting me, that there were multiple races throughout my lifetime that I was able to gain information from, which I think gave me a wider scope of understanding. Because when I came out publicly about this, I think it was around 99, 2000, I experienced a lot of people who were also talking about it, who were speaking it through a very narrow focus of, this is what it is, this is what's out there, you have to believe it, it's either good or it's either bad. And it's not necessarily interpreted in that way. So the lifetime experiences as a child caused me to look at life very differently, but I kept it hidden. Nobody in the family, nobody knew about this, except apparently they did. When I was in my 30s, I had a frank discussion with my father before he died, and he admitted he knew things went on in my room at night. And when I asked him, you never said anything to me, you never helped me through this, he said he was scared. He didn't know what to do or how to handle it. And then I also have a brother that I hadn't seen in well over 20 years, who a couple of years ago came to see me, and we talked about that. It was very interesting living in that house at that time. There was a lot of strange things that went on that he was somewhat aware of. So,
so how a lot of people I'm sure are saying, how did it not freak you out? Why were you so circumspect about these interludes? Why weren't you frightened, or why weren't you
stunned? I
stunned?
was frightened as a youngster. I was very frightened as a youngster because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know what it was. And so I would compartmentalize and put it away and say, that's not real, until nighttime would come again. You know, it was like a perpetual Twilight Zone episode that never ended. Wow. So I got to a point in my lifetime where I got so tired of being afraid, you know, and just like that, I mastered it. I said, I have enough, you know, let's just find out what this is about. And I went forward with a different type of consciousness into it. The other thing that I think makes a big difference is that I somehow taught myself, don't know how, don't know where from, don't ask me, but I somehow taught myself to train my consciousness to be aware on multiple levels at the same time. And as a result, where a lot of people who you've heard throughout history talking about extraterrestrial contact saying, oh, this happened and I was paralyzed and I went up and blah, blah, blah. I was able to keep a fragment of my cognitive everyday awareness and consciousness active, so that there's a piece of my mind while I was experiencing all this in kind of a type of state.
Like a third person, like watching?
Yeah, or almost, yeah. Where I was cognitively taking notes, you know, trying to analyze, trying to figure things out. And I wasn't just necessarily going along with it. And that's what also made a big difference in the level of information that I later got, because I didn't just go along with anything that they were expressing or putting me through. and I was always questioning and resisting.
I can see
And
that.
and I liken it to, if you remember the famous gorilla, Coco, I think was her name, who has learned to sign. And where things really took a change in her education was, instead of just simple things like drink, water, whatever, she started saying, "Where's the cat? I want the cat," and functioning at a higher level of cognitive recognition and languaging, where she was taking through a new platform of education, and it was opt. And I think it was somewhat like that with me, where they were able to see that I didn't accept the usual pablum that they gave us. And I didn't think we were going this much into it, but I will share this is one of the things that you will find that many extraterrestrial species do is that they try to appeal to the human's sense of ego and consciousness, saying, "You're special, you have a message." And so many people historically have fallen for that. And they go out and say, "They're going to be here on September 17th. Go to this field and meet them," or something.
See, but I think that's really important line of demarcation to take for all of us as we move into this different level of understanding.
Absolutely.
The layered nature of dimensionality, frequency, and consciousness. Because if you go along to get along, you're not going to get the answers that are necessary for you to function effectively in your environment and then collectively help lead us to the next stage of understanding what reality is. Because we've been fed reality is finite. You die, you're laying in the casket. I go by, you say Mark's not there. Of course he's not, because the impetus for who Mark's body is not his body. The body is the vehicle. We know that now. We can talk frankly like this now, but 20 years ago, the people with the white coats would be waiting outside of the door to throw us in a straitjacket. So for you to be able to navigate through all these idiosyncratic areas as it relates to the ETs and consciousness and a day job, and relationships and dealing with individuals in the communities of both healthcare and UAPs had to be a really delicate balance. So I applaud you for the ability to navigate through these little crevices and still retain your identity. But it had to be very challenging.
Well, that's the joy of being a senior citizen at this point, is you really do gain wisdom through the years. By the time I reached my 30s, I was inquiring and snapping back and saying, what the heck, and getting a new level of information. Because I was doing that, I was taking into space, time, dimensionality, things we call wormholes. I was given a whole new level of information. In my 40s, I was finally convinced to come out publicly, and talk about this, which was quite a trip, but it actually went very, very well. And I went into many, many different countries. The book I wrote that revealed what I'd been through was read in 25 countries, won an award. So that pathway I didn't expect to happen, but it did. But, as I even grew older, do I want to mention where I'm at now?
Well, we're in the same time zone.
I know. Each decade, or even just years, brings a new layer of understanding. And that's where I think a lot of us get caught up in, is we think this is it, this is what it is, instead of having the patience and wisdom to know, this is how I see information right now, whether it's what extraterrestrial reality, dimensional frequencies, near-death experiences, or death experiences, and not having the wisdom to know, but it's not necessarily how I'm going to see it 5 years from now, because experience is life, inner knowing, whatever information comes my way is going to alter that. So, life in many ways is like going up a high rise. You start at the lobby and you go, oh, isn't this interesting? You get up to the third floor. Oh, it's a little different, then you go up to the 7th floor and like, holy mackerel, look what I can see now. And, and it keeps going and going and going. And having the wisdom to know that who we are today, what we believe today, is not necessarily the ultimate truth. And I think that's part of inner wisdom that we have to gain. I've learned so much through my experiences. As we started out, I started as a young child, not understanding any of the things, but remembering them so I could understand them when I got older. Being afraid, mastering it, saying, "Oh, I just can't stand living in this fear. I'm just going to start taking control of the situation." Training my consciousness to be able to come back and use this information, not only just for me, but so that it's relatable and reasonable and can help others understand the greater world we live in. That's part of the issue that's great concern today, is that people are living life continually by saying, well, I think now that we have enough science that there's something out there and there's got to be, I don't know what, but got to be something. But they're still living in, ancient medieval types of ways in communities and the old systems that we have, and not understanding that if you think there's something more, then maybe we can be something more individually and as a civilization. And don't you think it's time we should start doing it before we lose the planet environmentally and aren't able to survive to go through all the changes that are starting to happen? So,
well, I think that's very important. And I think just for the linchpin of this was launched as the Near-Death Network, but as you and I have visited, to take it to the next level, it's interesting, just like ET contact is interesting. They're all interesting, but what is the fulcrum? What is the underpinning layer, which is consciousness, which has many levels, many frequencies, many dimensions, that we all exist on multiple dimensions simultaneously. Okay, great. Practically, how does that work for me now? So when the near-death experience happens, it's a level of consciousness that shows that we're not finite, we're infinite, right? So we experience the other side. We go to the other side of the veil. Some people see light, some people see Jesus, some people see Buddha. It depends on the archetype that they were raised in religiously in their societies. But what does it mean? How does it effectuate when you come back a different way to look at reality? I think that's the underpinning of all of this. So in your near-death experiences, through what they took you through, your multiple existences that led you to this incarnation, what variety of experiences did you have that helped create who Marcia is today?
The most important one is something that we started talking about, is that, being outside the body, being, in my case, pulled outside the body the very first time, made me realize that I am so much more than what that is laying in the bed over there. And it gave me totally, it emancipated me from any fear of death at all. And I was able to navigate through life differently. And that's where I think the value of near-death experiences come through. However, and I'd like to get into this at a later time, not now, I have been given so much information about the actual death and dying process that can really change how we look at it and how we control the situation, what we understand after we get out of the body, and where we end up and where we want to go to. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Well, first of all, from somebody who was in broadcasting, we call that a tease. So is this going to be in a show in like 6 months? You can't say, well, I know about the end of the world, but I can't really talk about the end of the world right now because I'm not prepared to do it. But you let the cat out of the bag. So you're the one who opened this door. So, you can either walk through it or not.
Well, I just want to put that aside because I think there's so many other things that are so relative to what is happening now and so important to discuss that, okay, let's call it a tease. As being an old lady, calling a tease is a riot, but let's call it a tease, and know that that's out there. But it really is extensive and takes up a lot of time. It would be 15.
Well, we could devote an entire show to that at some point as we go down the road. But I want to get into the practical application of all of your work, which is this book, which is fantastic. And because we always look for practical ways to apply what we've gleaned from new reality, right? And you've done that. So can you talk about how you created Spirconomics and the 3 groups that are the critical elements of how we go forward on this plan?
Well, this is where it all comes to, is I was talking about you just understand different layers of different things. And when I was in my 40s, I understood that all those separate incidences that had happened to me were to help me understand a different level of extraterrestrial reality and who we were. But in 2012, I started getting all different information about essentially what humanity needs to do to become an advanced civilization, and that we were going through a very unique time in history like no other, that gave us an opportunity to have a catastrophic, I shouldn't say catastrophic, even though that's what it is. Cataclysmic, yeah, that's a better one. Jump forward that we've never had before. And so I got all this information that became distilled into Spirconomics in terms of why humanity's been held back, aspects about our behavior, why we fall into certain patterns, and what we're fully capable of. And it came with several aspects that were like big chunks that would help shape us in our understanding. The first one is what you talked about, is that understanding from looking through the window of an incarnational perspective, that there's three mass groups who incarnate on the planet. The second one was looking at that behavior, actions, and human development is influenced and shaped by 7 main industries that are on this planet. And then the third one was that the way to take control of all this and change it so that it's optimized for human good is a very effective method of starting in small communities that will practice some of the optimization processes. And when I say that, I mean it's understanding that every single person in a civilization has the right to develop to their full capacity and should be nurtured to that. But that doesn't happen, does it? For many reasons, economic, social, etc. So those 3 were like the major components that would help us understand to develop into an advanced civilization. And this information was coming from a very advanced civilization out there. So those are the major building blocks. And you wanted to ask about the 3 people, waves of people who incarnate on the planet. And if you look through this window, it kind of explains certain things. The first group are people who have an understanding of themselves. They self-reflect. You might want to call them as people who are intrigued by the idea of enlightenment theories and philosophy, and how can I be the best version of who I am, and how can I contribute to society. So they're always looking, always analyzing, honestly self-reflecting on a situation, rather than allowing their emotions to take control and sway them into activity or communication that may not be beneficial at the time. The second group are the people who aren't as devoted to, let's call it the path of enlightenment, and are good-hearted people, but are so caught up on the hamster wheel of life, they don't get the opportunity to explore it the way they want to.
Just trying to survive, make their house famous,
pay the bills, take care of the kids. Exactly. So the mechanics of the current contemporary lifestyle prevents them from being reaching their highest potential. The third group.
They're the bad guys.
I'm not going to call them that, but they are actually at an evolutionary dead end on this planet. The third
are they
group,
malevolent?
I've learned to look at evil and good and malevolence and non-malevolence very differently through the window of understanding that I have. Let me first explain who's in that third group.
Sure.
It's basically people who have a very fundamentalist, rigid look at life. And it's either you have to believe what I believe, or you're an enemy. I have to get rid of you. You have to go away. And the reason for that is because if I allow you in, you will shake my foundation of understanding, and I'm not going to allow you to do that. So there's a lot of whether it's criminal activity or fundamentalist, very rigid religious or political thinking, it all falls into that rigid my way or the highway. Everybody else is an outsider and must be gotten rid of. So those three groups are currently incarnating here at the same time on the planet. It used to be we really only had two groups in the ancient times. We just had the masses who were trying to get by in simpler civilizations, and those who, very small population on the planet, who knew that there was something more. And you can see evidence of it throughout the Greeks, the ancient Egyptians, all throughout time, even through Middle Ages and the Renaissance period, etc. So you've got that three group incarnational paradigm here on the planet. And I have to stop. Remember, I know this isn't for everybody. These are just thinking elements that I have learned to bring into your repertoire and see if they make sense for you or not.
Sure.
But if you look at people that way, it does give you a different way of understanding because you communicate with each of them very, very differently. And communication is one of the critical steps that will take us forward to becoming an advanced civilization, is understanding our communication as well as our behavior. So that is a real strong fundamental part of Spurconomics, because the key of Spurconomics is to walk away becoming an emancipated thinker who understands it's not about me, it's about all of us, and that we're here incarnating together to give mankind an evolutionary kick in the pants to become that advanced civilization. So why is it so important to become an advanced civilization and now? Because we are not that far away from going out into space. And who we encounter and what happens to us because the way we don't understand space-time reality will depend on what we know, what we think, and who we are as to not only who gets invited in and where we get invited to, but the types of experiences we have.
So what does a Spirconomics community look like?
All right. So what they said is, apparently it looks like, this hasn't happened, so this is conjecture, that environmental change is going to result in a big difference in how communities live on the planet. The beginning of it will cause a lot of diaspora movement, that there will be cultures moving from lands that are no longer habitable to lands that will support human life. But it's going to be different all over the planet. And that there will be some areas that are advanced and still technologically moving forward. And there are going to be some that are going to be focused more on agrarian type of survival lifetime. It's life situation. It's going to be different. So by developing now the seeds of communities of people who will be willing to understand a lot of the information that's in the book and work together collectively to realize that humanity has the right to be the best version of themselves, to optimize our potential, that things like education make a difference, healthcare gives us the opportunity to live to our fullest capacity. You don't feel good, you don't live good, you don't think good. We all know what it's like, whether it's a headache or a crippling disease. So things such of that nature, understanding our relationship to the planet, understanding interspecies sentience and our relationship to other things. And so there's 7 of them that basically can help shift the cultural paradigm and belief paradigm on the planet. But by starting now, and the easiest way is on online cities, to find people who have a similar mindset, but also have the skills, capacity, intellectual, cognitive thinking, along with the exploration of higher consciousness and reality and how it fits together. These are the true pioneers on the planet, because not only do they have the thinking skills to create an advanced civilization, they have the capacity through whatever they've gained through their professional life journey, whether they're builders or creators or innovators. We've all had different pathways that we've taken. Everybody will bring something to the table and keep it from being an isolated community that this is what we believe, we don't allow anything in. It keeps it from being a cult. But the people who have a higher degree of skills and education often have a head start in terms of contributing actual infrastructure processes. It doesn't make them smarter or different. They just had different life opportunities and pathways where they can create some of the infrastructure that is needed that will support humanity going forward, particularly as all these changes unfold. From what I understand, the changes have barely just begun.
Well, and I think you're right in what I've learned in this brief time, I guess, in my collective existence in reality, is that when I stay in my lane, I'm better. I'm better at what I do than most people. So I feel I can contribute in that way. But when I get outside of my comfort level, that's when I tend to have my Achilles heel exposed. And I'm not going to be building dwellings. I'm not really good at that unless you show me, unless you mentor me. Like you said, if there are individuals that have collective abilities for the raising of the whole, just like we see in the near-death experience with these life reviews. You know, a benign interaction that I had with you at a streetlight where I just waved at you and smiled and made your day better because you had just heard that your best friend had committed suicide and you had somebody advocate for you who didn't really know you. That's those types of actions, even though small and somewhat benign, are the building blocks of how we take consciousness to the next level. So that's what intrigued me about the near-death experience. Obviously, but why are we here and what happens after we go is all important. But for you to have a model like this that we can aspire to, it is very significant. And in the 20 years that I've known you, you've created this book. Your first book was not like this book. The first book took even more courage. This is the first book, right? So to come out as a working professional and say that you've had visitation since you were an adolescent. And
not since in the crib.
In the crib, through adolescence, through your lifetime, and to be able to compartmentalize that and then utilize it for the good of the whole is something very admirable. And I think, just even for myself, being a sportscaster, a lot of people compartmentalize, put me in a little area. He's a good sportscaster, but what's he talking about? Death and dying and consciousness continuing, and the guy's lost his mind. What the hell is he talking about? Well,
you transferred your skills, talents, and ability to something that is relatable to the advancement of the civilization.
Well, you would certainly hope so. And I think so, not all the time, especially if you talk to my wife, when I leave peanut butter on the pantry door, that's not a good thing for a wife who has cleanliness issues with her husband. But having said that, I think if we all come with our open heart, but also use the ability to have not guile, but discernment. There's a difference between guile, which is trying to get over on somebody, and then discernment to say, I'm not going to upbraid this individual because they're very sensitive. Let me take them aside. Let me counsel them that way. Let's move in this direction unilaterally together and understand that this is a big paradigm shift for a lot of people. A lot of people are not, what are you talking about, a new reality? What are you talking about? Consciousness influences everything. If we can make it so fundamental and primary initially so that everybody can ingest it and see where they fit in the puzzle, I think that's important.
So there's two things I want to say is that one, in regards to what you just identified, is I found that people who are ready to change or going to change and have an impact on other people, things just happen and fall their way. It's not that, we have to offer any, they'll find it. They'll find whatever tools they need because their higher self, their silver soul, is directing and taking them in a direction. So it's more like having it out here. It's the way I said, I'll give you an opportunity to hear what I've experienced, what I've learned, and, I'll share it with you. It's up to you to decide if it has any relevance.
Take it or leave it, or take part of it and leave whatever you want to leave.
Because the whole paradigm is about mankind understanding that they have an opportunity to change and making that choice. It's not about making the choice for them. But here's where I want to go back a couple of steps, because there's an important thing when we're talking about people having the skills, etc., with making a difference, is that the Spurconomics model is built into three components. One is about understanding consciousness and how to tap into it and how to use it as an adjunct to cognitive analysis. And it's intelligent thinking with a mystic edge, basically. The second one is what we haven't talked about, and that is business. And so it's changing the paradigm of business, because mercantilism and greed and all those things that fall into that pile are what steers economics on our planet. And so under the Spirconomics model, what I've been taught by those who have come to visit and share it is that our new investment isn't money, isn't merchandise, isn't even services. Our new investment is humanity, and particularly the children, because they are the next generation of humanity. And so our what we value isn't necessarily something that's going to make a difference currently. We need to understand to change the economic model. That's why it's called Spurconomics. It's spiritual economics. So change the business economic model to start investing in things like human optimization and things that will make a difference for us in understanding the true value of our civilization. When I was young, I'm not that young, maybe in my 20s or 30s, I had a visit, and I remember them commenting that they were so shocked at the way humans lived, this particular civilization representative who was visiting me, because of the way we brought up our children. It was so insular. And they said in their civilization, everybody has the same love, capacity, and responsibility as the direct parent on your civilization. And so that child is recognized as the future of our tomorrow on our planet and where we live. And there's nothing more important than that. And everything is invested in that. Where, here basically is indicated, people care about getting a new pair of shoes for the winter, or, do I have the latest Hollywood color on, or whatever.
Right. Right.
And they just couldn't understand how a civilization could be formed around such non-value materialistic type of things that don't make a difference, rather than understanding your species is at risk. It's always at risk. And you have to understand your relationship to the planet, and you have to nurture the next generation. So I thought that was very sobering, quite frankly, and enlightening to hear that. And so there's a large component of Spurconomics, and this is all up on the website, where you can see that these are the values that make a difference, and what we need to have to move forward. And through the window of business, it's teaching us that these values are basically starting a social movement too, of finding the people who are willing and able to make a difference and running business very differently on this planet. So it's not about, do I really need another yacht, or would it be better investing that in a community of homeless people and getting them to a point where they have an opportunity, for those who are willing and ready to take it, to step out of that and move into becoming a functioning member of society. So, it's about sort of shifting the values, but using your business ability and skills through different types of branding, different types of economic values, different types of focus, who's your target audience. It's how do you build your business in a new direction so that you find the people who share a type of vision towards the future that is not the vision that is currently enveloping this country.
Well, and you and I visited a little bit before we came on today, and I had watched one of your podcasts from 10 years ago, and you had so fortuitously predicted how impactful AI would be at that time, which it was a neophyte idea. Nobody was even integrating it into the mainstream. Now ChatGPT is an acronym that everybody, well, let me check ChatGPT. but it's only as good as the information you give it, right? So you have to prompt it appropriately. But for us to integrate all of these things that you talk about that are in the model of Spurconomics to go forward in a more, let's say, a clean direction, as opposed to you getting dirty money and sequestering it away and having this hideaway in the Bahamas where your guy who's running your or gal who's running your office has to work 70 hours because you're gone. There's got to be
nothing of social value.
Right. There's got to be an equitable phase of this collectively, so every individual sees that they're part of this plan. They're part of the puzzle. And without that one piece, this puzzle doesn't effectively go forward in its full capacity. Now, it could still go on. But for people, everybody has an aptitude. Everybody has value. And if we look at the ability to identify that value, some people are leaders, some people don't mind following, but followers sometimes have great ideas that leaders don't have.
Absolutely.
Right? So
yeah,
for
it's
the
a
leader,
whole new brand of political paradigm and leadership that's involved in this. It's a whole different way than anything that's been out there before.
Well, and if you look at today, the left hates the right, the right hates the left, the world's a mess, we're in a war that, allegedly we were never going to war again. Yeah, sure. So how do we reconcile the almost like the Shambhala effect of Spurconomics, which is let's all sing and dance and be happy and we all do. So but how do you see this moving forward when you constantly get fed these images of pestilence and war and poverty? How do you reconcile those two different pictures for people?
So, the important thing is to step back and look at the big picture of what's out there and understanding, first of all, humanity has had these types of wars and leadership forever. I mean, you can go back to Caligula, you can go back to Genghis Khan, this is where there's no difference at this point. But the difference now is that, one, we have a new scientific and technological understanding, and we're beginning to raise the very beginnings, the inklings of cosmic reality and what it means to us. So, this isn't a Pollyanna type of thing because it's all about emancipated thinking. We don't need any more internet soothsayers telling us what to do. I mean, I look at me and, I'm just another idiot on the path trying to do better. I'm no different than anyone else. I just happen to have been exposed to some information. And I say, here, you want to, if it speaks to you, let's work together and see where it takes us at this point.
Well, I think, though, that self-deprecation, which I have as well, doesn't really serve us that well in some ways, because then we allegedly fail to take the lead. I don't mind taking the lead if I'm co-led by you and other people of like or similar ilks, that we collectively can build this new version of what we're potentially going to be. But I like that in a leader. I like a leader who says, listen, I don't have all the answers, but this is what I've been given. This is what I see unfolding, and it makes sense to me.
So two things. One, when it comes to leadership, a leader's role is to develop people around them, not to say this is what it is, because then you get caught up in your ego. This is about the collective coming to a new level of understanding and capacity. It's not about the soloist, it's about the orchestra. So, and the method that we started to get into and we veered away from is what needs to happen now is what's called parallel infrastructure, because there's never a better time to put something together than when stuff is crumbling and falling apart. And so instead of trying to fix what's already built on rotten infrastructure, there's a lot of people on the planet who already are doing magnificent things, especially outside of the United States. People need to go international and see what's happening in other countries that is so advanced and so far beyond what a lot of people are accustomed to, and figuring out how can I integrate that or learn from that and start something here? You know, there's two types of trailblazers. The first one is the one who just goes wildly into the jungle with a machete, no idea what they're doing, says, I'm just making a path, I don't care. The second one are the road builders who come behind, who know how to lay out maps and communities and, build the infrastructure that supports the path. Both are critical right now. You need the people who are just going crazy and just saying, well, just do something different. And then they need to allow the people to come after them to refine it and make it something workable that can grow and sustain. So parallel infrastructure is the key right now, because while things are falling down, people should quietly, not without a lot of fanfare, quietly be starting to organize, build, looking at what works, what's the best aspects, how can we create these small communities? There's three ways to make community. You can develop these online villages or cities, or, just get together in a Zoom, and just start pulling your people in. And I offer dialogues where people have, the opportunity to do that. The second one is kind of building up within your own community and seeing what's there and what you can manifest where you're at. And the third one is, for those who have the opportunity to do it, is there's always been people who've tried to build what turned out to be communal types of situations, but building an environment, a new mini city that has a lot of these types of attributes that we need to grow and support ourselves. But most people don't have the land or the resources, and the people who do are the old world paradigm, who are putting in the same old schlock that it's not going to serve us at all. It's
Are there examples currently of models like that you articulate in the book that are existing and doing this, not on a grandiose scale, but are doing it with effectiveness and in different parts of the world?
There's new examples of it. The book, when I wrote Spirconomics in 2016, and at the time I actually had an online forum, a private forum that people joined, where I taught them a lot of things about what was going to be happening with AI, and the changes in the world, etc. So 10 years ago, there were certain examples in there that, fizzled out, don't really apply today. People have the opportunity to go online right now and look, and just look in the different countries, look in different continents, look in Africa at some of the things that are being done. Look at the Scandinavian countries are amazing. They're still battling, all these areas are still battling with the old versus new. But there's a lot of things that you don't have to reinvent. They're already out there. And you can just adapt them and make them your own. So, Spurconomics is the underpinning of how mankind has been controlled, what's been happening to us, how the world is changing, what you have the potential to do, how to look at it through new eyes, and how to get ready, for cosmic introduction. Cosmic introduction is not coming as soon as some people think. I'll just say that.
So the whole disclosure thing that is imminent is just a bait and switch?
I want to answer
Yeah,
this
you wanted to say
carefully.
yes. I know you do.
In the end, there's not going to be much relevant to it. It's going to happen. It's not necessarily happening on a human time scale. This is a bit facetious, but if you have say a brother-in-law who's going to be knocking at your door, I'm camping out on your couch, I've got my 4 6-packs with me and my corn chips, and leave me alone, and they're making a mess and burning their way to the future. You're not going to really want to be answering that door when they knock, will you?
No vacancy.
Exactly.
No vacancy.
So and the biggest danger is that even though scientists have made some tremendous headway, they're making headway under human understanding and human science and human principles. So I'm not too worried right now. There might be some small advances, and people who have strongly been in the corner of we have to understand and accept that terrestrial reality is out there and have had their own community over the years of, their conferences and everything. They'll be very happy with whatever incrementally they get. But, I know what you're alluding to, and I'm trying to dance around it.
Well, no, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is. At the end of the day, just don't expect anyone to swoop in and save the planet. I mean, you got to save yourself. The bottom line is we're all sovereign beings. And if you don't accept sovereignty, then you can't have it. So if you ask me to go rob a bank and I say no, well, I've exercised my sovereignty. But if I go with you, I've surrendered it and I can't blame you. Ultimately I can say, yeah, it was her idea, but I went along. Well, then you're as guilty as she was. So we have the ability to independently think about these things. And
we don't have the ability, we have the responsibility, Mark. And that's the thing. Better. I mean, throughout the years of when I was speaking out, 99, 2000 forward, I would occasionally get asked, aren't they going to save us? Don't they care? No, this is your responsibility. You need to understand your relationship to the planet. Why should they? I thought it was a very foolish and naive type of question and way of thinking. It abrogates any responsibility upon ourselves. And you're right. It is all about us and how far are we going to go and how far are we going to evolve. But, for the sake of time, we haven't had a chance to go into it, but there are different conditions out there right now that also allow us to make a catastrophic leap forward. So there's a lot going on multiple levels, but really it's up to us. And, what do we want to do? And so many people just either want to sit back and complain or feel totally helpless. I don't know where to start. And so they just want to turn on the TV and watch their favorite show. And you don't have time for that. Because the one thing that I haven't mentioned that was so important is that I had a life-changing visit in 1997, which resulted in me writing the first book, which told about my experiences. And they warned of several things that would happen in the future. And one of them, there were three, and the third one was that what we're about to tell you must never, ever take place on the planet, because if it does, it is going to impact the quality of life for every single man, woman, and child. No one will escape it. They said there will come in the coming years an opportunity for a nuclear explosion. This must not take place. And from what I understood is the rationale is that, well, somebody thinks I'm just setting off a nuclear bomb in this part of the country. It would have a triggering effect upon the tectonic plates and the world would change forever. And so they said, this is out there and this must not come to pass. So when you look at where we're at right now and all the foolish craziness that's out there, those words echo in my mind constantly, how we were warned that there must not be a nuclear explosion because we will not have the understanding of that we're initiating a trigger effect on this planet.
Well, on that happy note, let's move on to how we wrap up every show. So give folks, based on your body of experiences, not only the interactions with those who have guided you from above, but your own internal compass, some practical applications that they can employ in their daily lives to make them better and more navigable.
The bottom line is that people have to understand, every single one of us, two things. One, we have the capacity to act, to make things different, but the tools through which we make it happen, we have to really give a lot of conscious thought to. Communication. How do we talk to people in a way that is not flaring? And also, there's a time where you just say, and, I'm not making a difference here. I don't waste my time.
I'm out.
People waste my time. Yeah. So understanding that. Two, finding people who are willing to come together and work towards building a better world. They're out there all over the planet. We have the technology to connect with them, because our lesson is, as I said, it's not the soloist, it's the orchestra. And this is what our incarnational group collective lesson is about, is learning how to work together to create change on a massive scale on a planet. So, you can do whatever you choose to do, but we have so many tools available to us in terms of ancient knowledge, ancient wisdom, current technology and science, cognitive understanding, higher consciousness. Find what speaks to you, whether even if it's none of that, then go down and work and rescue, help in an animal rescue or
Sure.
homeless shelter. It's about making a difference.
Well, I know you're a big dog person. I'm a big dog person. So I want to go live on a dog planet.
All right.
That's my
Well,
next
cats rule the
incarnation.
internet. I love all animals, but cats. I actually, with the rescues I work with, I bring the
Yeah.
cat balance in. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. We've been talking about doing this for a long time and
Yeah, I
trying to
know.
make it dovetail into a more broad category. But I don't think there's any broader category than life on this planet, at least for us right now. So,
Or if I may, this is really everything that we're doing and talking about. It's all about the greater reality. And that's a good paradigm to look at under this is, there's a greater reality than the one that we know.
how can people get a hold of you? What's your website? Can they email you? Do they call you? How do they set up? Because I know you do a lot of consulting as well, correct?
Yeah, I do a lot, especially on the business side. I do a lot of business consulting because fortunately I'm able to bring some results to people that really help them get ahead. The website is beyondzebra.com. So beyond and zebra like the animal. Because of the spam and the website attacks with the current world situation and everything, it's hard to get hold of me. The best thing would be just go to the website, fill out the form for I want to either a dialogue or a private session, and just put in the comment box. If fill out as much as you can and put in the comment box, because the reality for me is I don't time. Honest to God, if I could get a big bowl of it, my day is so filled between the business consulting, the full transitional Spurconomics consulting. I put a lot of time into animal rescue work, people using all of my skills and abilities. It's really hard. I'm a one-person show, unfortunately. That needs to change at some point, but I can only reach out so much. So the best thing would be to fill out a form on the website and just send it in and
Okay.
get started.
Well, we'll put
But,
all that contact information in the show notes so people
Okay.
can get a hold of you.
And
Thank you.
read Spurconomics. I just will say, and just, you know what? You'll save hours and hours of training and understanding. Just read Spurconomics, $10, download it. It's
Here
worth
it is.
Just-
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's great. It's not a tough read. It's a good read. It's
Simple.
practical.
it's
See,
fast.
and that's another thing. Things that are too esoteric for me are not necessarily useless, but you need something practical applications, and your book is full of practical applications
So,
that they're not untenable, they're achievable. So that's what people can look forward to. Thanks a lot for
Thank
stopping
you.
by, and we'll have to do since you teased in the middle of the show this big revelation, that will be our next show that we do in a couple of months. So people will have to stick around at some point and listen to that.
That's funny. All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you for having me, Mark. It was a
Okay.
joy.